All right, everyone. A very good afternoon and welcome back to the UAE Careers Community Virtual Career Fair. Our next session is to learn all about PwC and the Flying Start program. And with us today is Miss Charlotte Lever. Just as a
There.
quick introduction, hi, lovely to meet you, Charlotte. Thank you for joining us.
No problem at all, no problem.
Great. So, just as a quick introduction, Charlotte is a qualified chartered accountant and has worked as a manager in assurance. Since September 2015, she has become an early identification development manager in PwC's student recruitment team. This involves being responsible for the design and delivery of training and development on a range of programs aimed at early talent identification, including PwC summer internship, women in business, black talent in business, and Flying Start programs. Charlotte was originally a student on the Flying Start scheme, a partnership between PwC, the ICAEW, and Newcastle University, which basically involves 4-month work placements annually as an accelerated route to the ACA qualification. So, once again, Charlotte, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us.
No
Over to
problem. Thank
you.
you for that introduction. So I think I'm going to share my screen now and just go through some information. So let me just check if I can. We use Google Hangout or PwC, so I just have to get used to a different forum to use. So let me just check this is working okay. 2 seconds. Just see. Can you see my screen there?
Yes, we
Just
can.
check it's working okay. Can you see the opening slide which says who are PwC?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Fab, I'll just put it on slideshow mode. Hopefully that's nice and clear for everyone there. Perfect.
It is. It's awesome.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for that introduction. It's totally right that I have been involved in the Flying Start program for a number of years. So I am going to cover what that is because it's quite a strange concept because effectively it's kind of a combination between higher education and also between working for PwC. I appreciate quite a lot of people might have heard of PwC or might not have heard of PwC before, so I'm going to cover that as a little bit as well. I was going to say this morning, but actually I think it's obviously this afternoon with you. It's just hit 12 o'clock here for us. So I am based in the UK. I'm based in the northeast of England, actually a little city called Newcastle. Started my kind of career there and then moved to London for a little while and then moved back to Newcastle and kind of have continued my career with PwC ever since there. So as I say, I'm going to cover who PwC are. I'm going to focus specifically on sort of 2 areas today. I'm going to talk about our technology side of PwC and also our accounting side of PwC. Then just if anyone's interested, particularly for those students on the call who are sort of 17, 18-year-olds and thinking about the next steps, I am going to talk specifically about the Flying Start application process, but appreciate there might be people on who are not at that stage. And I'm going to talk a bit more generally about PwC and what we have to offer, because as that great introduction mentioned, I look after things, there's sort of 2 types of recruitment with PwC. There's kind of coming straight from school, and then there's after you've been to school, kind of going through the graduate program, so doing a undergraduate degree at a university and kind of working for us throughout. So I think it's useful to touch on that as well. And then obviously an opportunity to ask any questions that you've got at the end. So I guess just to start with a little bit about who PwC are, as I say, some of you on the phone might be really aware of us, some of you might be quite new to that. So always used to talking through who PwC are. So effectively, we're a professional services firm. So what that means is if a company comes to us with a big business problem, we would like to think we would have the expertise in lots of different fields to help solve that problem. So effectively what we kind of sell is our people and our specialisms. There's kind of 4 big accounting professional services firms globally. PwC is one of them, and there are 3 other key ones as well. But obviously there's lots of mid-tier firms as well, but we often get referred to as the big 4 in the global network. So I thought it useful just to touch on a little bit about some key metrics. Being from an accounting background myself, I have got the ACA ICAEW Chartered Accountancy qualification that we're going to touch on later on. So I still do like numbers and still do like statistics. So just got a few on here to share with you all. So we've got about 20,000 people that work for PwC in the UK and about 280,000 globally. So we are in 150 countries. I guess one of the reasons between that and why we have that is that if you think about companies and big corporate companies, that they tend to be global, and it's really important that we have specialisms and we can mobilize people throughout the whole globe if we need to support our clients. In the UK, we've got 20 offices. One of them is the office that I sit in, which is the Newcastle office. We work with a huge number of clients, so this would be global, but specifically the statistic is in the UK, so over 25,000 clients, and they can be from varied sizes. They might be really small privately owned businesses to the massive, we obviously talk about the FTSE 100 in the UK, so that big London listing of clients, so some really big clients there, and kind of anything in between. It might be wealthy individuals, it might be charities, doing a lot of work at the minute for the UK NHS. We do take on a large number of people in the UK firm in terms of our school and college leaver, our undergrads and our grads. We really pride ourselves on training development at PwC, and we do talk about this a lot. So that's why we take on a lot of people at that kind of junior level. So whether that be 18 or sort of 21, 22 level post university, we do have big intakes of people coming through that we train through on their career. So on the next slide, just a little bit about the different areas that we work in. I think this is really important. As with many companies, quite a lot of jargon, quite a lot of terminology that we use. So I think it's always useful for everyone to know what, when we talk about these different areas, what we're actually meaning. So this little wheel that we've got here is the areas of the business that we work in. So if you have heard of PwC, you probably know us as an accounting firm. So the sort of bread and butter of what we do is that we work in our audit business. And that's what we will come on to cover, but a significant amount of people that do our Flying Start specific program, they will work in the audit business. So sometimes it used to get referred to as assurance, but these days we call it audit. So effectively, some of you might already know this, but every single year a company will need their financial statements reviewing, depending on the size of them, but a significant number will. We, as auditors, go in and review the financial statements. So effectively what they're telling the stakeholders of the business that they have made in terms of, it might be profit, in terms of assets, in terms of liabilities. We will go in, scrutinize those accounts, talk to the client, make sure we understand the business, and work through a set amount of procedures to check we're comfortable with what is actually happening. And that happens on an annual basis. So every single year, company will need us to go in and review their accounts. So quite a lot of our people start in the audit business. It's a really good way to start your career, because you really get to grips, if you're interested in business, you really get to grips with loads of different types of companies. And really, it's a really good place to start your career, to learn about business and what good and bad business looks like. So that's kind of our audit business. Tends to be that people do the chartered accountancy qualification in our audit side. That's just because it's important that we have those specialisms when we're advising clients. I'm going to move around the wheel, not in a regular way here, I'm sorry, but I'm going to jump straight across to the tax wheel there. So in terms of tax, that's, instead of looking at the whole set of financial statements, we would specifically look at the tax of a company. So it might be the corporate tax that they're paying, it might be their VAT, it might be that they're thinking about a company's thinking about, I don't know, setting up a new headquarters abroad. What are the tax implications for its employees if they do that? It might be that we're looking at someone's personal tax and the personal tax that they're paying, whatever. There's lots of stuff that's kind of legal related in there. So for us in the UK, the impact of Brexit that it's having on the tax system when we have updated budgets. So with tax, you tend to work on quite a lot of clients at once. With audit, it's quite specialized. You normally work on one client for a set period of time in your early stages of your career. But the reason they kind of go hand in hand is that they complement each other, and that our tax guys very often do the chartered accountancy qualification as well. So then what else have we got on here? So we've got consulting. So I always think this is quite something that students really want to go into, the consulting side of quite a lot of big companies. So our main area in consulting is our management consultants. So what they do is a client will come to us with a problem. It might be it's more likely to be non-financial related. So it might be that they want to implement a new IT system. It might be that it's a hospital trust and they want to reduce wait times. It might be a big company thinking about modernizing its HR HC system. And they'd come to us and say, we've got this problem and we want you to consult on that and give us some advice. So that's a big significant amount of what we do in that arm. We also have a big element of sustainability in there. So quite a big focus for us and lots of other companies is on sustainability. And it's important that we have advisors in that field. So the consulting side of what we do, I think it's, as I said, it is quite an area of interest for lots of students. But that being said, I always think that all the roles that we have in a professional services organisation, effectively, as I said earlier, people are paying for our expertise. So it's important that we are kind of consultants across these areas, but that specific area of consulting, that's what our guys will do there. They don't do a chartered accountancy qualification there because there's no need for that. They're not technical experts in anything like that. They're just more giving advice to clients on a variety of topics. So when I started at PwC 12 years ago, I've been at the firm a long time now, the technology side of our business, it was definitely there, but it didn't have its own, these areas in the circle are what we called areas of business or lines of service. It wasn't on its own, which shows, I guess, the big shift change, even in the over 10 years I've been at the firm, on the technology focus. So our technologists, you can imagine this is ever increasing what we need in that space. So we might have real specialists in terms of Sage and different systems. We've got a massive team thinking about cybersecurity, which when you look in the press, it's still such a big part of what the CEOs are worried about, a cyber hack. So lots of people doing a lot of work in cybersecurity and helping our clients. It might be, we've just started using drones for some of our work. So it might be helping a client consult on that. Artificial intelligence, how we're using that. So the tech arm of our business is just forever growing, because obviously what we need as a firm is to be able to advise our clients really successfully. We need to be a step ahead of them and making sure that we can consult on those. So yeah, really interesting. In the 10 years, it's become its own section and it just continues to increase. A few other areas on here that I think it's worth noting as well is our deals side of the business. So they're particularly busy at the minute. I think the market's actually quite buoyant. So that will be where a company comes to us for probably one of three reasons. It might be that a company's really struggling. And we know the impact of the pandemic at the minute does mean that quite a lot of companies are struggling. So our deals team will help consult on how a company might improve its financials, or if it's really struggling, it might be that we have to help liquidate the company. Then we've got two other bits. We've got transaction services, which I always describe as kind of short and quick. And it might be that a company's thinking about selling or buying part of its business, and the transaction services guys will go in quite quickly in a short period of time and review whether they think that it's right or financially viable to buy that business. And then we've got corporate finance, which is like the long deal element of deals. So from kind of beginning to end, a company might come to us with saying they might be thinking about selling part of the business or selling the whole business, and we will go through the whole process to the sale. So it might be that they need to refinance, it might be that we need to find some buyers, whatever it might be. So those deals can last quite a long time. The structure that we have at PwC is that we don't take on many recruits into our deals graduates side of the business. We tend to want people to be qualified and then come in once they've had a bit of exposure to different businesses. And then just to touch on a couple of smaller areas of our business, risk assurance, that used to be part of our assurance business and it's split away. That is more focused on not just the financials of a company. It might be the controls framework that a company's using and making sure that that what they're doing in terms of their controls is right. It might be that they become the internal auditors, so not just the auditors in terms of what we do and go in and look at financial statements. It might be more general controls that aren't just financial, that we will go and work side by side with a client on. Then smaller bits are our legal and our actuarial. So in terms of legal, any people who are interested in becoming lawyers out there, that is what that side of legal does. Quite often people see this and probably think it's all the legal stuff to do with us as employees at PwC. It's not. It's so that our lawyers can do specific work on deals or anything like that a client might need. And actuarial, again, any statisticians out there, make sure you're having a look at a career and career to be an actuary. So that is much more focused on projections going forward. So it might be big pension schemes that a company might be involved in, and it might be projecting what's going to happen in the future to work out, well, actually what's your liabilities at the minute. So that is, I think, hopefully quite useful for everyone, because it just gives you a bit of an overview about what we do. And this kind of terminology, when any of you start job hunting, or if you currently are, you'll see an awful lot of this on the website. And I think it's really important to start looking at these different areas and trying to work out where your skill set fits and which area you might be interested in. On the left-hand side, we just put about kind of our aim. So our aim is obviously to become the leading professional services firm, and that quite open about the fact that that's one of our aims and that's what we want to do. The other thing that always goes side by side, hand in hand even, with the fact that we want to solve important problems for clients, is kind of making sure that we have a good purpose in terms of what we do in society. So we always talk a lot about the fact that we're going to come on to it a little bit about our values and how they align to kind of our own personal values and also the firm's values. So that's what this slide talks about. So we talk about 5 key areas. We're going to talk a little bit later when we talk about the recruitment process about our skills that we look for there, but this is more specifically just us as a company and what we focus on in terms of our values. So the 5 are sort of listed here. Just to pull out a couple, I think it's again, just when you're starting to get a feel for what different companies do, making sure you look at their values and see how they align to your own. But care probably for me is a really important one, particularly in the last year. It's been tough, hasn't it? And I think making sure that when you're not seeing people face to face, we're caring for each other, we're dealing with their workload, if they're struggling with anything, if there's anything at home we need to deal with, and just showing that respect for each other. And then I guess the reimagine the possible one, we get asked a lot, you know, why should I pick PwC by different people? And I get the question. The reason that this value is probably one that I value the most, in terms of we will always year on year challenge ourselves to improve things and change how we're doing things. And I think that's really good in your career, that you don't just stagnate and you don't just sit and do exactly the same work year on year, and that's important. So I think we're forever reimagining the possible and seeing what we can do. I've mentioned a couple of things there, that now we're using, you know, how much things have moved on even 10 years in the firm, using drone technology to do some of our audits, and making it much more efficient and effective. With me in student recruitment, we've obviously virtualized the whole recruitment process this year, so that was quite a big change for us, and has worked really successfully, actually. So yeah, these values, I think, again, just important to know that's our values at PwC, but also to start, when you're thinking about your career, looking at how the values of that company align to your own. Just another slide on here. I think it's useful for you all to know that it's really important for us and many other companies to improve our diversity and inclusion. A really big topic. It always has been, but obviously events over the last sort of year or so have made it even more key that we do focus on that. So if you go on the website and you Google anything to do with diversity and inclusion, there's loads of great initiatives we do. So mentioned at the beginning, one of the programs I look after is our Women in Business program, and that's an undergraduate program targeted at attracting more females into PwC. We've got a Black Talent in Business program as well, again about attracting more Black students to work at PwC, just because we are underrepresented in those areas, and we want to make sure that we've got the right voices in the room, the right people for our clients, the right opinions, that we're not all the same person, and that we're sharing our ideas across a diverse network of people. So yeah, another thing that I would definitely look to review when you're thinking about companies, and definitely something that I really value with us at PwC. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about Flying Start, and as I say, I will cover it in a second, just so that because it probably isn't a term anyone knows unless they've Googled anything to do with it already. But I just thought this slide was quite helpful, more so for anyone, just so you know, there is the conventional route into PwC. There is I will just do my degree and then I'll apply for PwC in my final year for a grad program. But there's loads of other things you can do, either pre-university or post-university, depending on what you want. So we do take people straight from school, so we don't expect everyone to have a degree. So that's our school and college leaver program. Our Flying Start program, which is what I'm going to spend a bit more of the session on, is a hybrid between both. Effectively, you do 4 years at university, but you also come and work at PwC for periods of time during those 4 years. Slightly differently to what some of you might already know as a work placement, which is where you go to university, but one of your years you do abroad or at a company. It's different to that. It's kind of every year you will come and work for us for a set period of time. And then if you decide to go down the conventional route of higher education, and you do a general degree in whatever it might be, geography, maths, statistics, whatever, for us in the UK, there's no, apart from some really specific roles, you don't have to have a specific degree background. And at that point, we do a lot with undergraduates. So I mentioned the Women in Business and Black Talent in Business program. We've got our summer internship, which happens the year after you graduate, the year before you graduate, that you can do in the summer before that. Got a work placement year. So what I would encourage everyone to do is when you're at the point where you're going to university, even in your first year, make sure you're looking for things to start finding out what companies do and preparing yourself so that it's not all in your final year of your study that you're thinking about your job. So the next slide just starts to talk specifically about our Flying Start program. So we've got two key Flying Start programs, I guess, one in the technology space and one in the accounting space. So I mentioned before that I came through, I think it was mentioned before that I came through the accounting Flying Start program, and we're going to cover that a little bit more. But in the last 3 years, we've also released our technology degree apprenticeship. The reason we've done that, I've kind of already said, I guess, at the beginning, that with the expansion in tech and how important it is, we thought it was really important to make sure we were recruiting talent at a really early stage. And that also we wanted to make sure that a degree apprenticeship is effectively something there where you're paid from the very beginning of your degree. So you go to one of the universities listed on this slide, so either Birmingham, University of Leeds, or Queen's in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and you do 4 years, and during that time you are kind of basically, for anyone that doesn't know what a degree apprenticeship is, you're effectively employed by PwC at the very beginning of your degree. And you have integrated placements, which we mentioned on here, it might be during summer or it might be 1 year. It's fully funded, so the tuition fees are paid for, and you do get a salary throughout. One thing I would say about this is just to be aware that there are restrictions here in terms of visa requirements. So if anyone is interested in the technology degree apprenticeship after this, just make sure you're reading all the really clear guidance on the websites and making sure that you understand whether you're eligible or not. The entry requirement is 3 A's, or it varies a little bit between the unis. One of the unis is 3B. So again, just make sure you're checking that out if you're interested. It is effectively, it's either a computer science degree you do or a software engineering degree. So we describe it quite often as the best of both worlds, because you get your degree, but you also do all your work experience with the aim of getting a job offer once you've finished your degree. And then our Flying Start accounting program, quite similar. This is not a degree apprenticeship, so your tuition fee is not paid for, and also you're not on a salary throughout the entire degree. You do get a salary when you're on placement, that is the equivalent of a first year at the firm. This degree we do at 4 UK universities at the minute. So University of Manchester, Newcastle, Nottingham, and our Reading programme. I did it at Newcastle University. I mentioned that's where I'm from at the beginning, but actually we didn't have any of the other 4 at that point. Manchester's our newest programme, and that launched, we've just had our first intake of students. Just shows how focused the UK firm is on this format, because it works really well for us. And the reason it works really well is that you apply for PwC when you're 17, 18, going through the UCAS process. You do 4 years where, as I said earlier, for Flying Start accounting, you will do at least 1 term of your university year in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, and you'll come and work for us, and those will be paid. And then that works really well for us, because as a firm, we get extra resource when we're really busy and we've got a lot of client work on, but then the students go back to university and when we don't need them as much. The really good thing about this, and one thing why I loved the program, thought it was really good, was that I mentioned before that to become a chartered accountant in the UK, you have to do the ICAEW. So the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, they're the body that give you the chartered accountancy qualification, or the ACA, as it's mentioned on here. So you have to do 15 exams to become a chartered accountant, and you have to do 450 days work experience. And on the degree, you do 12 out of the 15 exams. which is a significant amount. It's in the UK, it's the only way you can do 12 out of 15 at the university. Most degrees you get that are accounting related, you usually only get about 12, up to 8 exemptions rather than the 12. You also gain a degree, so it's kind of like your exams that you're doing at university. They count towards both your degree and also your qualification. And if at the end of that you do well, you get your 2-1 degree, you get a job offer with PwC to join as a third year. So effectively, by the age of 23, you're a fully qualified chartered accountant. So it's a fast track to become a chartered accountant. So if anyone on the Zoom is really interested in becoming a chartered accountant, definitely one to look at. There's not as many restrictions on the Flying Start accounting program for international students as there would be for the technology degree, which is slightly different. So really proud of the program. Take on quite big numbers, between sort of 60 and 70 on each of the university programs. So quite a big intake for us coming through that way. So just because we're focusing more on the Flying Start program, so it was just useful to bring to life a little bit more about tech, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about accounting. Have covered some of those areas, but I think it's just useful for you all to hear a little bit more about it. So in terms of tech, we've already talked about this a little bit, that actually the world is massively changing. Gosh, overnight, with just like so many of us, so 22,000 people in the UK, overnight we were all working from home, and we had to deal with that. So the importance of tech is really key in a changing environment, and it's never been more key than it is at the minute, and will continue to be. So many of the problems, I guess, that companies come to us with can be solved by technology, or maybe technology that's causing them problems. So our tech guys are extremely busy and making sure that that we actually give the right advice to our clients in terms of different problems that they might be coming to us with. So this, in terms of your placement, I mentioned that for the tech degree, you might do 2 summer internships and a work placement year. There's huge amounts of areas that you might work in. So I've already mentioned cybersecurity is a really big one for us, and lots of work being done around that. Robotics, I don't think I've touched on that at all. So using robotics throughout to solve really important problems. Tech consulting, so you might remember before I mentioned about management consulting, and someone might come to us and say they want to implement a new IT system. There'll be lots to consider. So the migration of the existing data, what system to use, training people to use the system, lots of different issues. So our tech consultants might lead that project to do that, to help support any clients that we have around that. So data analytics, I definitely haven't mentioned this. So we all know the importance of big data and the focus that has. We always worry, don't we, about sharing our data. We get a lot of questions around this, but as someone who has a numbers background, I mentioned at the beginning, data is so important, because without data, you don't know what you're driving, what your targets are and what you're aiming for. So I mentioned diversity for us at PwC. Without knowing where we sit on diversity, how are we ever going to know how to improve? So on application forms going forward, you will get asked quite a lot of information to do with you personally. It's not for us, it's not that we're looking at that data specifically for you, it's more generally gathering the data so we can see how we're performing. And that's the case with our clients. They might want to know how it might be a big supermarket, and they might want to know how specifically one area or one region or a specific city-based supermarket is doing. And without the data, we won't know that. So our data analytics team, they might be developing some programs that they can use. They might be training people up, whatever it might be. When I first started in audit 12 years ago, we still did a lot of stuff manually. So we quite often had a bank statement, and we would refer back to the information the client gave us in terms of, say, I don't know, it might be the revenue that they've made, and we would check that they said they'd made this sale. Did they actually get the money in? We now use an awful lot of systems to do with digital audit. So that's effectively where we use tech to scrutinize massive amounts of data and information, and we say automatically things like the bank statement and the revenue will match up, and if there's any problems with that, we will investigate. So big changes in terms of digital audit and how we use that. Drones and AI I've already mentioned. So our guys will work across these different areas of tech, and hopefully some really interesting work that they'll do throughout either their some internship work or their work placements. In terms of why it sort of stands out, I think it's just in terms of innovation. I've talked about for me that reimagine the possible stuff is really important. You can think about tech, that's what everyone's doing on a day-to-day basis. Talked about diversity and inclusion and just a big range of tech teams across the firm. So somewhere across the UK or even globally, we will have someone who's got a specialism in a specific area of tech, and it's important that we have that for our clients. So just in terms of accounting, I've already mentioned it a little bit, but I think it's just useful to reiterate. So these are the three areas where you guys who might be interested in accounting or might have looked at it before, these are the three areas where classic kind of accountants would work at PwC. So loads of different types of accounting outside of PwC. So you might become an accountant for one of the companies that we go in and audit. It might be that you think about setting up your own business and you consult with an accountant, whatever it might be. But the specific areas of business that we work in that really the people are qualified accountants is these three areas that I've touched on already. So I mentioned about in audit, our bread and butter of what we do, where lots of people start their career examining financial records and statements. Effectively, what we have to do, when I say we, the partners are the most senior people at our firm, they have to sign an opinion saying that the accounts are what we call true and fair. So that means within a certain benchmark that the numbers we believe that they have represented, what they've written about the company in terms of its performance, whatever it might be, that it is what we refer to as true and fair, and that will go in the audit opinion. So if anyone's done any work before where they've looked at a set of an annual report for a big company, there will be an audit opinion in there that our partners will sign, and that will include a statement about true and fair. Mentioning here it's to provide assurance and confidence that those numbers are right. So, that the company will continue to operate if someone's thinking about investing in it, that the employees will continue to get paid, that if the company was thinking about a big expansion, that it's actually viable. So it's a really important, the annual report, for so many decisions that the stakeholders might make. And then mentioned about tax already. So help companies to understand their tax obligations, and this whole thing about tax and law quite often going hand in hand. We mentioned on this slide as well. So experts in regulation. So I'm sure it's the case for lots of different places, but obviously specific laws that might have come in the last year to do with the pandemic that we've all had to cope with. Lots of ramifications for clients on that, and we are there to help specialise. So but we've had things like the furlough scheme in the UK, and obviously there's massive tax implications for that, whether you're paying your staff or you're not. And we will be there to help digest the regulation that's coming from the government and explain that to our clients. I mentioned about working with high worth net individuals as well, something else that we do in the tax side of our business. And then finally, deals. So help businesses through uncertainty. I like this slide because we've never been in a more uncertain time than we are now, have we? And we are there to support. We've been pretty busy, to be honest, as a firm during the last year because of this. I think looking to advisors that they trust to help give them opinions on the direction of travel. And people have continued wanting to do deals or sell businesses or buy businesses. It's continued. It's been pretty busy for our deals guys in the business in the last year. I think I've covered everything on that slide already when I was chatting through deals. So in terms of what we do to actually offer our clients, so if you were to go on placement on the Flying Start program and you were working in audit, how might you actually be supporting the client? The client's paying some money for us to be there. How might you actually support them? So specialists and expertise and really good knowledge. So there's sort of two things that you will get that through. So we mentioned throughout that you become a chartered accountant when you work in any of these areas. So the chartered accountancy qualification, those 15 exams, there's lots of extra work you have to do to get to that. All the work experience, making sure that you really understand the technical side of some of the really complex problems that a client might be facing. So that's one way that you'll do it. And then the training and development piece I mentioned earlier, really key at PwC. You will be trained in kind of the PwC way as to how to do an audit. And that is a way that we make sure that we have the knowledge and the information to be able to actually guide our clients right. Because effectively they're trusting us to know the answer. They're querying and paying us to know the answer. So we need to. And if we don't know the answer, we need to find a specialist who does. So a lot if you like talking to people, you can tell I love to talk, which is one of the reasons I went into audit originally, was if you do like talking to people, interacting with people, learning about new business, that's a really key skill that you need to become a chartered accountant, and specifically for us to sort of work in these areas we've talked about, because you need to form a relationship with the client. You need them to work with you. You need information from them to make sure that you can check whether what they're saying in their financial statements is right. And we do this in a variety of ways. So we used to spend a lot of time on client site. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that in the last year. So we're still interacting with our clients just like we would here, virtually, making sure we interact with them. Might be that we invite them to one of our PwC offices so that they can come and have a meeting. So very much interacting on a sort of face-to-face, whether it be virtually or in person, to get to know the client, to make sure we fully understand what we're doing. We've mentioned about technology, big change there. And then the other thing that we do, which is really popular, is we do a lot of events and seminars for our clients to, if there's big changes in guidance, and there often is, what impact does that make? So there's accounting standards that we all have to follow, and if there's big changes to those accounting standards, clients quite often need some help and support on that. So we're there to support them around that. So I'm just going to take a 2-second pause there. What I'm going to talk through now, I think, is the recruitment process for Flying Start. The reason I'm going to talk through the recruitment process for Flying Start is because it is slightly different to the undergraduate process, but some bits are the same. So I'll talk through it for Flying Start, and then I'll talk a bit more. I don't have any slides on it, but I'll talk a bit more generally about what the differences are to the undergraduate stuff. I'll just take a sip of my water first. So I guess before I go on to it, why is there a recruitment process for the Flying Start programs? There is, because it sounds really odd, but effectively, not only are you applying to university, but you're also applying for a job at that point. So some of our guys who are doing brilliantly in their career and maybe at the level below partner, now we've got Flying Starts who are kind of director, we've actually just got our first partner, they might only have applied for PwC when they were 17, 18, just after school for the program. And they might not go through the recruitment process for anything ever again. So it's this really odd thing that you might apply for PwC at that 17, 18 age and then not have to apply again. So that is why for the Flying Start programs, which are the degree programs, you have to go through the recruitment process, because effectively at that point, we're not only assessing you for your eligibility to get onto the degree, we're also assessing you for your eligibility to get onto PwC. The good thing is you may not have to do the recruitment process ever again, because you'll have got your offer for the university is also your job offer at that point. So we will put you on placement as you come through, as long as you pass all your exams. So just so everyone knows, there is a recruitment process. So and the reason behind that before I go into the detail on it. So you apply for Flying Start through UCAS, just as you would normally on a standard application. So if anyone's thinking about applying for a university in the UK, you apply through what we call the UCAS system. I think most people will be aware of that. So you select each of the universities as one of your UCAS options. So I think that's something to be really clear on. We do have some people that put all 4 accounting programs down on their UCAS form, and you can absolutely do that. But obviously that's quite a lot of your selection to put down for the Flying Start program. So if the university like what they see, so they'll review your personal statement, which I'm sure some of you will have started thinking about. And they will review your academics. And if they like what they see, they will invite you to take part in the PwC online application. So there's a bit of repetition. So you'll have to fill in a Flying Start application form on what we call our Workday system. And in there, as I said before, we gather quite a lot of data to just check how we're doing in terms of lots of different things in terms of our performance. But we also gather some basic information. So who are you? What's your email address? You have to sign up for data sharing with us at that point, so we know that we can contact you. Bit of detail about your school and your background, and if you need a visa. So lots of questions for you to answer there, but usually about 20-minute process for the application form. Then this is the start of the normal PwC recruitment process that if you applied as an undergraduate at university, you do. So you do our online assessment. So online assessment is, if anyone's heard of psychometric testing, it's effectively that, but it's in the form of a game. So we will assess how we think you will perform in the area of the business that you've decided to apply for. You'll have, it's about an hour, you'll have various activities to do that it feels like you're playing a game. You'll have some numerical tests to do. So we quite often get asked, how could I prep to do the game-based assessment? What would I do around that? We always say, make sure you've done some basic maths if you haven't done maths for a while, that you've practiced doing some numerical work. But there isn't a huge amount of prep you can do here. There's some practice sessions on our website that you can do, but this is more about, are you a good fit for us, and are we going to be a good fit for you? And the test tests loads of different data points about how you react to the situation. So a game-based assessment, it's called. So that's the first stage. If you get through that, you do a virtual video interview. So this probably is something that very few of you will have done before, but it is pre-recorded. So it will be one of the girls in our team asking you questions, but it'll be a pre-recorded video. You'll get to about 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the question, to answer them, to prepare your answer. Then you'll pre-record a video of you answering your questions. Sounds like a really odd concept, but very common in terms of recruitment now and how we do it. So what we will look at in the video interview is we will very much look at why you've applied for PwC, what you know about the Flying Start program, if it's a Flying Start program video interview that you're doing. What research have you done? Why are you passionate about becoming, say, a chartered accountant if you've gone for the Flying Start accounting program? And then it will ask you about certain scenarios. So it might be that you're working as part of a team and someone's underperforming, and how would you deal with that? So very much scenarios that you might find yourself in at university or at work, and how you would cope with those. So that's a video interview, pre-recorded, slightly strange. We always say to students, in terms of practicing, if you've not done that before, just as you would have in the past, maybe do a practice interview with someone who knows you quite well. Or the key, most awkward thing, but is really useful, is to practice recording on your mobile answers to a variety of questions. So you can check things like, if you can see yourself okay on the video, if you can hear yourself okay, if you're portraying yourself okay, if you're answering the questions. Really awkward, but the best advice we always give people is to do a bit of practice where you pre-record and you can watch it back. And then the final stage, if you get through that, is an assessment event. Actually, we've just done them for this group of people who'll start this September. We just did them last week, where you do a group discussion. So a group of usually about 5 to 6 people. This time we did it on Google Hangout, where you'll get a business case to read and you'll discuss that business case and share your opinions. And if you get through that, you will get a phone call, which we are in the process of doing for our students this year, where we'll give them the outcome in terms of whether there's an offer from the university and from us to study on the Flying Start programme. For anyone that's on the call that isn't starting to think about wants to go to university and do a general degree, or is currently doing that, the process is quite similar for the recruitment. Obviously, there is no UCAS element. You just apply directly on our website. So for anyone that's not, where that's new to you, most of our roles open in September for the next year, if this makes sense. So our roles for this September 2021 would tend to have opened in September 2020. So we kind of recruit a year in advance. And I think for anyone that's job hunting at any point in the next few years, really key to know that's what a lot of people do in the UK. So it's kind of like a year in advance. So if you are wanting a job, just make sure you're really organised and you look in those September periods for the jobs for the September after. So yes, you'll see a list of jobs that you might be interested in. So say you think, oh, actually, yeah, London Audit is probably where I really want to apply. You do an application form for that specific area that you want to work in. So it might be graduate London Audit. You can only do one application at a time. I think it's worth noting. You can't have multiple applications in the UK. So go on and do my application form, very similar information to what I talked about for Flying Start. And then you do the game-based assessment, again, exactly the same. You do the psychometric testing and you play the game. Next stage, exactly the same, the video interview. So pre-recorded answers to a variety of questions. There's a little bit more focus there on why you've specifically applied for the area you have rather than the program. So why have you applied for audit? What's your understanding of an audit? And then the final stage is slightly different. It's slightly longer. You do what we call a career focus day. So that is a longer recruitment process. That part takes usually about 4 hours, where you it sounds very scary, 4 hours. I've just paused for a second, but it's really good in that you really get a feel for what we do. So you do some written exercises, you do some numerical exercises, you do a group discussion, just like I mentioned for Flying Start, and then you do a nice face-to-face interview with one of us from the recruitment team, just exploring a little bit more about why you've applied for us, just making sure you know what you've signed up for, you know what the first few years are going to involve, particularly if you've got a qualification that you have to do. We want people to be really aware really aware of what you've applied for and what as I say, what the first few years hold. Similar process, there'll be an offer at that point. The offer for a graduate will be dependent on a 2-1. The offer for Flying Start, just to take a step back, will be dependent on your A-level results. So there's still an element of you have to get certain academics to get through with us. So on the next slide, I mentioned at the very, very beginning when we talked about values and the values at PwC and how important those kind of 5 values are and aligning them to us. And I mentioned that the sort of 5 competencies that we look at as well. So these are the skills that effectively we look at PwC throughout our recruitment process, but then also throughout our development at the firm. So these 5 competencies we will often review and see how we're performing against. I think this is really useful because you might have just started drafting a CV, thinking about it, and what sort of skills do you have and how do they align to someone like us? You can start looking at your CV and comparing how that CV ties with these qualities that we're looking for. So some of them you won't be surprised to see on here. So whole leadership and relationships. So we've already kind of talked about relationships in terms of clients and building that network. Whole leadership is kind of more about leading in the beginning, leading yourself and making sure that you raise when you don't know things. You are really clear in terms of being punctual, being engaged. And then as you go through your career, it'll be a lot more classic leadership. So leading a team, problem solving and making decisions. And then the 3 competencies in the middle, probably you'll read them and they'll make sense, but possibly not something that's particularly obvious. So business acumen, as we've said before, we are primarily there to solve a company's problems. So we need to have good understanding of business. So making sure we think commercially about a problem that a client might have, making sure we focus really highly on quality. If you Google, a lot about audit quality, it's a really key focus for the Big Four because we're being scrutinized a lot in the press in terms of our audit. So quality is really key, big drive on that and always has been. Global and inclusive. So again, hopefully you can hear this coming through the presentation that we've talked about diversity and inclusion, and that's still that's really key to us, but inclusion and in terms of our recruitment and our competencies is really key. So sharing ideas, making sure we're open-minded about people, that it might not be how we would approach a task, but that doesn't mean it's not the right way to do it, and sharing any perspectives. And then technical and digital. So this is a bit more focused on, we need the technical skills to be able to advise our clients. So for us, that would be more on the recruitment side, knowing what you've applied for. We talked about the fact we explore that quite a lot. In terms of just showing you've got an ability to learn and you're interested to learn and geared up for that. So these competencies, they're on the website. We're very open about the fact that this is what we look for. We talk about what we're assessing an awful lot so that people know the process that we're going through. So this is almost the end of my presentation, but I just wanted to put this up, which is our PwC Employability Hub. So I mentioned quite a lot about top tips and a variety of things you might want to do in preparation for any recruitment process, whether it be at PwC or whether it be somewhere else. But our Employability Hub is excellent for that. There's quite a lot of embarrassing videos of people in our team doing mocks of video interviews that might have go wrong, or video interviews that have gone really well, and there's some really good top tips on there. Sounds really basic, but if you've not been through anything like that before, it's a really good place to start. There's some really good stuff on general skills, quite a lot of focus in terms of tech upskilling now as well that we like to see from people. So again, check out the Employability Hub if you've got a little bit of time to look through that. I think the last slide for me is a question slide, but I also thought it was useful just to put up our sorry, the formatting's gone a bit funny here, but to put up our different links that we've got. And also, if anyone wants to join our talent network, so that is a questionnaire, 2 seconds that you can fill in, and we will email you about things, say when roles open or anything we think you might be interested in hearing about. So yes, I'm going to stop there. If anyone, I don't know if we can do questions on here, but probably time for me to pause because we've been chatting 50 minutes, which always happens. So if anyone does have any questions that they want to ask, feel free.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was incredibly informative. And
No problem.
just looking at our two feeds, I don't see any questions coming in right now, but would you be comfortable with them getting in touch with you post
No
session?
problem. No problem at all.
Okay, great.
Fab.
Yep, nothing in the chat. So, okay, in that case, Charlotte, thank you so
No
much
problem.
for taking the time out to speak to the community.
Great. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. And for everyone else, we will be starting the next session in 10 minutes. Thank you.